Okay, this actually seems like a fake headline, but unfortunately it's real. Donald Trump has unleashed a brutal attack on complicated airplanes after the horrible tragedy involving a Boeing 737 MAX airplane flown by Ethiopian Airlines over the weekend. In a moment, I'll show you Donald Trump's statement about this, but I want to first sort of set it up for you. Yesterday, I interviewed psychiatrist John Gartner, who has been sounding the alarm from a mental health perspective on Donald Trump's behavior for close to a year at this point, if not longer. And what Dr. Gartner believes is that Donald Trump's behavior is indicative of some combination of cognitive decline, mental illness, a pre-dementia state, or some, again, combination thereof. And we talked about a bunch of examples yesterday. We talked about Tim Apple. We talked about Shrum and God bless the United States of America. We talked about Trump walking away at a bill signing without signing the bill. There's so many other examples of this. And just within hours of this interview with Dr. John Gartner yesterday, we have a new example right in our faces. Donald Trump took to Twitter yesterday and went on a broad-based attack against modern aviation technology and complexity, arguing that we need to go backwards in aviation tech, which of course makes no sense as aviation is safer today than it has absolutely ever been, according to the numbers. Doesn't matter to Trump. Let's take a look at what he tweeted yesterday, starting with airplanes are becoming far too complex to fly. Pilots are no longer needed, but rather computer scientists from MIT. I see it all the time in many products, always seeking to go one unnecessary step further, when often old and simpler is far better. Split-second decisions are needed, and the complexity creates danger. All of this for great cost, yet very little gain. I don't know about you, but I don't want Albert Einstein to be my pilot. I want great flying professionals that are allowed to easily and quickly take control of a plane. This is absolutely outrageous. The world is laughing at us because our president understands nothing and is proactively damaging. He's doing harm by virtue of the statements that he makes. So let's see if we can break this down piece by piece. And you tell me, Pat, if I'm missing any important element of this. First of all, aviation has never been safer, okay? The older, simpler planes Trump is talking about crashed more often. Automated flight controls of different kinds date back to the early 20th century. Now, what Trump may be referring to, although I don't even know why I'm being so charitable here, may be some elements of what are called fly-by-wire systems, where flight controls are not physically manipulating elements of the airplane that control flight, but are doing so through effectively a computer, through electronic means of different kinds. And of course, anytime you introduce some kind of technology, there's a risk that that technology will fail. But accounting for all of the redundancies and systems that are in place to safeguard against that, aviation is safer than ever. If we want to tie Trump to this on one side or the other, you could make the case that his shutdown a few months ago slowed down repairs and updates to planes by hampering the agencies that are involved in aviation safety. So on the one hand, he's completely wrong that there's a concern about aviation becoming more dangerous. On the other hand, if it's not gotten safer at the fastest possible rate, we could point to Trump's shutdown as at least one possible reason here. And then, of course, there's also just the incredible hypocrisy, Pat, of the fact that there's no more complicated plane than Air Force One, which is a Boeing 747, which he flies weekly, if not multiple times per week, which, in addition to all of the normal complexity of that plane, has all sorts of additional systems, including one that allows for mid-air refueling in case of some emergency where Trump needs to stay in the air for who knows how long, communication system, medical systems, etc. This is just dumb on every level.
I really don't think it's even worth playing point counterpoint with this one. I think it's just Trump's ego getting the best of him. He views himself as an authority figure on almost everything. Like there are those clips of him saying that no one knows more about taxes than me. No one knows more about campaign finance than me. Apparently the same thing is true for aviation. He doesn't know what he doesn't know, and he has the resources to reach out to people who actually do know about this stuff. Like he could contact the head of the FAA if he wanted to, but he'd rather not. He'd rather just tweet based on his impulses on these things.
Yeah, well, this is weaponized ignorance once again. And Pat's right. I mean, the biggest problem isn't that Trump doesn't know anything about a lot of the things he talks about. That is a problem, don't get me wrong, but that's not necessarily the biggest problem. The problem is he's the president. He believes he's an expert on everything, and therefore he doesn't listen to actual experts. And as far as the Boeing 737 MAX, I mean, there's an issue with the Boeing 737 MAX, okay? It needs to be sorted out. Many tragic deaths as a result. There's no denying that whatsoever. Two crashes within a 5-month period of the same version of the 737 MAX happening shortly after takeoff with sort of erratic altitude changes. So there's an issue here and it needs to be sorted out. But Trump's commentary is coming from a place of total ignorance. Maybe he thinks if it's too complicated for him to understand that no one could understand it. That's another interpretation. But what you end up with is tweets like this, and it's bad for the aviation industry. It's bad for the tourism industry. It's bad just for people who have anxiety about flying, which is a lot of people. And it's embarrassing on an international level. So there's clearly something very, very wrong with this man, whether it's what Dr. John Gartner pointed out yesterday, personality disorder, delusions of grandeur, or some combination thereof. Maybe we will someday be able to better sort out, but this is extraordinarily erratic behavior. Make sure you're following the David Pakman Show on Instagram at David Pakman Show. The rejected voicemail segment that we have piloted on our Instagram page, people are loving it. I'm getting tweets and emails about it. What we do is we get like 100 voicemails a day, or some, maybe even more if you consider both phone numbers that we have, and the fact that on weekends they also continue accruing. We only play a handful of voicemails on the broadcast show each week, but we have taken some what we are calling rejected voicemails that are just wacky or unusual in some way, shape, or form, and we're publishing them subtitled to our Instagram page at David Pakman Show. So check that out by following at David Pakman Show on Instagram. While you're there, follow me as well, david.pakman on Instagram. We will take a break, and next I'm going to speak to Hannah Gurman, who's a professor at New York University. We're going to get into whistleblowing and leaking. What is the difference between the two? How have different administrations handled whistleblowers and leakers? Why is this so important to a free, independent, and strong press? All of those questions and more we will deal with Hannah Gurman right after this short break.